Hello everyone, it's Junie checking back in with all of you. I hope everyone is doing well. So I'm just a little annoyed and I'm really going to try to curb my tone. Because I don't want people to get the things that I said twisted. But somebody did. Actually, two people did. But I really, I need to kind of clarify what I said. Because people are really hypersensitive when you talk about neurodivergence. And I get it, I understand. A lot of people, when you mention neurodivergence, they want to think of autism, children on the spectrum. I was a child, I am on the spectrum. So let me tell you, when I tell you that there is a dark side to being a neurodivergent, especially when we turn into adults, okay, I'm not talking about children, I'm talking about adults. Let me get that very straight. That people with fetal alcohol syndrome, they have a high crime rate. So when I said the fact that he has fetal alcohol syndrome, speaking as a neurodivergent myself, who is on the spectrum, who has ADHD, who has dyslexia, and who has been diagnosed later in life with high-functioning autism, high masking for, years now, a few years now. I can speak freely about the dark side of being a neurodivergent. People don't want to talk about it because there's this, and autistic children need to be protected, but autistic children grow up. ADHD children need to be protected, but ADHD children grow up. Fetal alcohol syndrome children grow up. And the reality is that there's a lack of impulse control that we have. We have intrusive thoughts. Most of the time, our thoughts are very innocent. They're very pure. But even our most purest thoughts can kind of can get a little out of control because they become repetitive. OCD is repetitive. Now, there is plenty of documentation, not just WebMD, but you can WebMD this shit. You can pull up WebMD and you can ask, does fetal alcohol syndrome put you in a higher bracket to commit a sex crime? And it does. Google it, or go to WebMD like I did. I went to WebMD, and then I looked for articles online. There's tons of articles online. Our prison systems is loaded with people with fetal alcohol syndrome. And a lot of them didn't give a false confession. A lot of them are just plain guilty. Now, yes, they can give a false confession, but there's also a high percentage rate that are just straight up criminal. That's the reality of it. So his fetal alcohol syndrome, it's not really giving me the vibe that I should feel pity on him. Because there's two other people involved. Now, if it was just him, and there isn't dogs barking in his backyard that's hitting on human decomposition, and a dog in his house hitting on human decomposition in the house, and then Brandon's mom's house, she said these dogs hit at her toilet. Thanks for telling me that my toilet is leaking. No, honey, if the dogs are hitting on your leaky toilet, they're decomposition dogs. And if there's moisture there, that makes it even more alarming because we all know that decomposition dogs, they need that moisture. It actually makes the scent stronger. That's why you see decomposition dogs, if they smell a human body near water, they will jump into the water. It helps them smell better. The smell is so strong, they usually jump into the water. That's what they do. We've seen it in Sebastian Rogers' case. It's what they do. They'll jump in the water if they get a hit on something. So, yes, human decomposition dogs, they can give a false positive, but then, you bring in another dog to back up that dog, and then you bring in another dog to back up that dog. So one human decomposition dog given a false narrative read, understandable, but they brought in multiple dogs. Now, a lot of people want to clump it all together to one percentage rate, and I'm going to clarify this again too, because each breed has a success rate and a percentage. And there are different types of dogs. There's drug-sniffing dogs. They have a really low... Drug-sniffing dogs don't do very well. There's certain breeds and drug-sniffing dogs that do better. But there are drug-sniffing dogs that fail miserably. The drug-sniffing dogs, they don't do very well. Bomb-sniffing dogs, they do a little bit better. But human decomposition dogs, from the research I researched, I came out with 75%. The 3 articles that I read, it was about, they said 70 to 75% success rate for decomp dogs. But see, people want to clump it all together, and you really can't do that. Because drug-sniffing dogs, bomb-sniffing dogs, and human decomposition dogs, they're all different. And tracking dogs, they're all different. Because there's a tracking dog, and there's a human decomposition dog. Tracking dog wants to smell a fresh, living scent. A human decomposition dog is looking for the smell of death. And they hit it, Michaels. They hit at Stacey Wondra's backyard. So when I'm telling you that you have dogs hitting in your backyard, your wife is saying that you did it, Brandon is saying that you did it. Now Brandon's saying he's not, and then Brandon said he did, and Brandon said he's not, Stacey said he did, and then Stacey said he's not. You know, they're constantly flipping. If it was just Stacey Wondra alone, I might give him a little bit more. Maybe he was bullied and treated really bad by the police, and that's why he was forced into a confession. But then you add all the other circumstantial evidence, and then that fetal alcohol syndrome makes you really wonder, did he go to the dark side? Like a lot of us neurodivergents can. And I'm sorry, I know this pisses people off because they don't like to talk about the dark side of fetal alcohol syndrome. They don't like to talk about the dark side of having ADHD. They don't like to talk about the dark side of growing up as an autistic child and becoming an adult. And how we have repetitive thoughts that really can bombard us. Now let's just say my competitive thoughts are the History Channel. I love NASA. That's my topic of interest. I will sit there and watch NASA. I could look at the stars. I have all these websites where I'm tracking satellites, and I look at the sun every day, and I'm constantly looking at the moon. I'm looking for all the things that NASA gives us reports on. I am totally into NASA. That is my topic of interest. And yes, it can take over my life. Okay? And I love the History Channel. I have tons of history books. That is my topic of interest. I don't sleep. I'm up all night Googling this shit, looking this stuff up about history because I love history. I can sit there and watch a 22-hour documentary about the pyramids in Egypt. I love that shit. That's what I am obsessed with. That is my topic of interest. Okay? So it's a very innocent thing, but it can turn dark. Why can it turn dark? Because if I'm sitting there 22 hours watching a documentary about Egypt when I need to go wash my dishes, well, then that's interfering with my life, isn't it? Or if I can't get to the doctors, or I'm not, functioning like the way that I should. This is where I'm telling you, we can have thoughts and we can do things that are repetitive and it can really affect our everyday life. Now, I have a friend who's a neurodivergent type. He's autistic. He's totally, he collects, he builds Legos, like Star Wars Legos, and builds all those, builds the ships from Star Wars out of Legos, and takes him weeks to do each one, but he has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And he was addicted to it as a child because he was autistic and he loved Legos. But now as an adult, he still has it. But you see, he can get obsessed with it. He could sit down there in his basement for 20 hours just building Legos. So then you can see where our autism and where our ADHD can get a little out of control because we're not going outside. We're not doing the things that we need to do. And this is why I'm telling you, if there's a dark thought or a dark obsession, it can really get dark. Meaning that if you're a neurodivergent person and you've always wanted to rob a bank, they just might do it. And let me tell you something about a neurodivergent, whether they have fetal alcohol syndrome or not, and lack of intelligence. There is a drive. What is the drive? The drive is the impulse that we have to do it. We have to learn about it. Me, I want to learn about history. So my topic of interest is very, very, very innocent. My friend's topic of interest is building Lego ships. So his is very, very innocent. Okay? But let's say a neurodivergent or someone with fetal alcohol syndrome always wanted to take a child or always wanted to molest a child or had inappropriate sexual fantasies about a child. The fact that they have fetal alcohol syndrome makes me a little bit more uneasy with the two other idiots saying that they did something. And the fact that you got dogs barking in the backyard. I just wanted to tell you that's what I meant. We have a dark side. Most of the time our thoughts are very pure. Most of the time our thoughts are extremely innocent. But even our purest thoughts can really mess with us. Like I've shared with a lot of you my personal experiences dealing with being on the spectrum. And as a young mother, I was very nervous when my children were newborns. I didn't let anyone hold them for a few weeks. Both my children, and they were 10 years apart, and it came back with my daughter. But when my son, at least for 6 weeks, I guess it was probably about 6 weeks. I was so obsessed that something was going to happen to his little head, and I didn't let anyone really hold them. And if someone did hold them, I was an absolute wreck. I'd be sitting next to them in an absolute panic. Please don't drop them. Please don't drop them. Right? Don't drop them. Hold their head. Wash your hands. Please. I was absolutely obsessed with thinking that I was going to drop my baby. And the whole time I was holding my son and breastfeeding my son, that thought would be, don't drop him, don't drop him, don't drop him. And if somebody wanted to hold him, I would be like, don't drop him, don't drop him, don't drop him. I never dropped any of my children. I never dropped a baby, but it's the thought. It's the intrusive thoughts that are repetitive and on repeat mode when we're on the spectrum or when we have this neurodivergent issue, okay? Like I said, that's a really innocent, pure thought, isn't it? Oh, don't drop the baby. But when I'm not letting anyone else hold the baby, like my husband, he was very sick with my son. My husband had viral encephalitis and he had a stroke when I gave birth to my son. And maybe that made me more triggered because I was always nervous when my husband was holding the children because, he's just a little rough around the edges because he's struggling with his own brain issues. So, I probably should have let him hold the babies more, but I was nervous, right? As a new mother. And I regret that now because I think I could have allowed my husband to have more bonding time holding them as infants, right? So, yeah, I regret that. Like I said, I'm being very, very real with you guys. So when I'm telling you, I'm speaking from personal experience. I'm speaking from personal experience that fetal alcohol syndrome is also a neurological issue, which puts you also on the spectrum. And they can be very impulsive. So Stacey Wondra has 2 other people saying that he did it. He has human decomposition in his backyard, and he has fetal alcohol syndrome. Actually makes me, as a neurodivergent person just like him, I have the right to speak upon it and tell you that guess what? Yeah, adults that are on the spectrum, we can have really dark, repetitive, intrusive thoughts that can really take over our lives if we're not balanced and if we're not keeping things in perspective. Obviously, he has issues with religion. He talks about it on Justin Farrell's channel. He talks about how God and this and that, God and that. He has fanaticism with religion. He has issues with controlling his food intake. That's all obsessive, compulsive. And that can be with his fetal alcohol syndrome. We lack control. So tell me, is it really that far off for me to say that if he has fetal alcohol syndrome, he's in the area of where a child went missing, he's changed his fluid right on the corner where Michael was, right? He's at the freaking water park earlier in the day. Was he scoping for kids? I don't know. Okay, don't know. It's very suspicious. I'm very suspicious of him. And the fact that he has fetal alcohol syndrome does not make me feel pity for him. It makes me more suspicious of him because of all the other circumstantial evidence surrounding him. So his fetal alcohol syndrome might be able to say, okay, maybe law enforcement took advantage of him or whatever, but there's still 2 other people saying that he did it, and they failed their test. So here's my thing. On here, on Justin For All's channel, this man gets up and tells the world, I passed my lie detector test with flying colors. Oh yeah, my mom told me I passed my test. The other guy told me I passed my lie detector test. It is not a badge of honor that you passed your lie detector test, buddy. You want to know why it's not a badge of honor? Because you said to us that you lied through your confession. So your lie detector test should be a fucking fat fail. It should be a fail. If he was intelligent and if he was smart about it, he should be on Justin For All's panel right now saying, I failed my lie detector test because remember, everybody, I was lying. Remember, I lied. I lied through my whole confession. So what kind of questions does law enforcement ask about people who are confessing that their wife dug a 4-foot hole in his backyard? Okay? It is not a badge of honor that he passed his lie detector test. It's not. Don't give him this get out of free jail card because he passed his lie detector test, people. Think about this. Really think about it. It's not. He told us that he's lying through the whole confession. Then why did you pass your lie detector test? Because the questions they would have asked him were, did Sarah put a hole in the backyard? Did Sarah dig a hole in the backyard, Stacey? And Stacey would have said, yes, I watched Sarah put a hole in the backyard. And that would have been a pass, wouldn't it have? He said he passed his test. Would they have asked him questions? Did Brandon put duct tape on Michael's mouth? Did you witness Brandon putting duct tape on Michael's mouth? Well, Stacey Wondra would have said yes. And that showed up as a pass. They would have asked Stacey Wondra, did you hurt Michael? He probably would have said no. And that shows up as a pass. Well, he said he didn't hurt Michael. He watched the whole thing go down. He watched them bury Michael in the backyard. He watched Brandon do all kinds of shit to Michael. He had nothing to do with it, but he was there. And his lie detector test is coming back as, yeah, he's telling the truth. And guess what? The other 2 idiots, they failed. They failed their test. So they're asked, did you, Sarah Wondra, she's asked, did you hurt Michael? Guess what? That's a big fail. So Stacey Wondra's test, he's being asked, did Sarah hurt Michael? And his comes back as a pass. So Sarah hurt Michael. Allegedly, hypothetically, if you're looking at these tests like that, it is not a badge of honor that he passed his test, because they would have asked him the same questions that he confessed to. It's an interrogation technique. That's what law enforcement does. I'm sure you guys watched Chris Watts when he did his lie detector test and how they work it in along with the confession, along with their whole interrogation. It's part of the interrogation. And the interrogation, he's singing like a canary in there. He's saying to the world that Sarah did it and Brandon did it. And he just watched it all go down. Now, it is perjury to lie to the police. But, he'll try to use the fetal alcohol syndrome to get away from any perjury charges. And he probably will get off of it. He probably will. Because there's plenty of documentation out there that shows that, yeah, when you have fetal alcohol syndrome, that, you can lie. You can be a compulsive liar. But it still doesn't excuse the other 2. They don't have fetal alcohol syndrome. They're just batshit crazy. But they don't have fetal alcohol syndrome. They failed their test, and they said that Sarah did it. Or Stacey did it. Damn it, I keep getting Sarah and Stacey mixed up. But you understand what I'm saying? The fact that Sarah and Brandon failed their test backs up that Stacey's telling the truth. Because Brandon would have been asked, did you hurt Michael? No. Did you witness Stacey hurt Michael? Yes. Big fail. Big fail on their test. Sarah, did you hurt Michael on her lie detector test? No, I didn't hurt Michael. Failed. And Stacey is saying Sarah hurt Michael and he passed. Hello? It is not a badge of honor that Stacey Wondra passed his lie detector test. It makes him look like he's telling the truth then. So his whole confession is there's some truth to it. Right? Because if he wasn't lying, he would have failed his lie detector test because they would have asked him the same damn questions in his confession. In his confession, he said he saw Sarah put a hole in his backyard 4 feet deep and she had a shovel and she dug the hole. Can't remember the color trash bags, white or black. I'm sure he doesn't take out the trash. I'm sure all the other guys do. Yeah, he wouldn't know that. That's probably a very truthful statement. He don't know. But somebody was in that backyard decomposing. Who? Why? Why are all three of them lying? Why are they all lying? If it's a big nothing burger in the backyard and there's nothing to see here, then Stacey and Brandon should have passed their lie detector test with flying colors. And Stacey should have failed. Stacey should have been a big fail because if Sarah didn't bury Michael in the backyard, then his lie detector test should come back as a big fail. But he passed. See? It's weird, right? And it's not just one lie detector test, there's 3. It's suspicious. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't make it make sense. It still doesn't excuse the fact that there's dogs barking in your backyard that something at one point decomposed back here. What? Why are they all lying? I'm very suspicious of Stacey. I'm very suspicious of Sarah. I'm very suspicious of Adrian. I'm very suspicious of Brandon. I'm suspicious of the neighbors. I'm suspicious of a couple of pedophiles in the area too. But I'm not going to have someone put words in my mouth and twist my words because I'm speaking to you as a neurodivergent type myself. And I am telling you, if they have fetal alcohol syndrome and they already have a criminal record of theft, they are all religious and their ideology about religion is a little fanatical. They're overweight. That's an impulse disorder. They're impulsive. And that's why I said, speaking as a neurodivergent myself, because I have personal experience from it, hey, well, if he went to the dark side, if he's got dark thoughts that he's always wanted to molest a child or kidnap a child or do something to a child, that to me puts him in a higher percentage rate that he could possibly do it. Why? Because there's a lack of control and a lack of intelligence when you have fetal alcohol syndrome. And you have a lack of impulse control, and you just might act upon them. I am not picking on anyone's disability. Don't come at me, because I got the same damn disability, and I can speak about the dark side of us. It is overwhelming. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about adult autism, adult ADD, adult ADHD, adult Tourette's, adult, OCD. We have a high rate for drug addiction. We have a high rate of alcoholism. We have a high rate of doing things that are impulsive, like pulling out our hair or pulling out our eyebrows, things like that. It makes no sense. Picking, constant picking, to the point where we can hurt ourselves, right? People don't want to talk about the dark side. That a lot of neurodivergents become addicted to substances. A lot of neurodivergents, they grow up into adults and they commit suicide. Oh, but nobody wants to talk about that kind of dark stuff, right? Because nobody wants to talk about it, but it's there. There is a suicidal ideology attached to us, but they don't want to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about the tantrums that can happen when you're on the spectrum as an adult and the paralyzation that goes along with it, where we become paralyzed. A lot of people on the spectrum, they don't leave their house. They're shut-ins. They don't leave. They don't go outside their house. Many of them are like that. But people don't want to talk about it. Because guess what? That autistic kid grows up. We just want to talk about, protect the autistic children, protect the ADHD children. Yes, we all need protecting, but you know what? A lot of us are really slipping on the mental health that happens when they turn into adults. There's a dark side to us. And it sucks. And I hate it. And I have embarrassment attached to it. I have shame attached to it. But it is what it is. And I do my best to try not to allow my thoughts to turn dark. but it can easily happen. So when I said him having fetal alcohol syndrome does not make me feel sorry for him. It doesn't. It makes me a little bit more suspicious because of there's such a higher percentage rate of being lack of impulse control. That's what I meant by that. So you can come and attack me in the comments all you want. Come at me. That's fine. I already got people on Messenger coming at me saying, oh, you can't say that people with fetal alcohol syndrome grow up and be a criminal. That's not what I'm saying. But it's there. There's a possibility. All of us could grow up and become a criminal. All of us have that capability of growing up and becoming something not so good. But it's harder on the kids that are on the spectrum because we lack impulsive thoughts. We lack impulse control, whether that be physical. You see someone with Tourette's, their eyebrows are always twitching, their eyes are twitching. You see someone with high anxiety, with ADHD, like me. We rock, maybe we move, our movements are a little weird, maybe we don't make eye contact. That's all part of this lack of controlling our movements. And the same thing happens in our minds. And if we had a dark thought of always wanting to hurt a child, well, you know what? I'm sorry. They might just act upon it. Most of us would never do that. Most of our thoughts are very pure. But I'm saying don't deny that there isn't a lot of documentation out there backing it up. Because there is. There's a lot of documentation out there. There's a lot of repetitive sex offenders that have fetal alcohol syndrome in our justice system right now. The article I read was about Australia. There's a couple of articles about the high percentage rate of fetal alcohol syndrome repeat offenders and repetitive theft criminals. They really are into theft because they think they can get away with just taking something because it's an impulse. So that's what I meant by Stacey Wondra. I am not picking on his disability because I got the same disability. And I can talk to you about it openly. I'm being very fucking real with all of you when I talk to you guys about this stuff. And it is hard. But you should know. It's there. All right. Take care. Blessings to all of you. Bye-bye now.
During that excavation process, the Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue Mountain States Detection Dogs deployed multiple certified human remains detection dogs on the property.
Listen to this.
All of them alerting to the presence of human remains.
All of them.
So that's where the problem,
right?
That's where the story really starts to fall apart for you. Is you're saying that I made this up, but then you have multiple dogs. Every dog that was there hit.
Mm-hmm.
They're not hitting. I mean, you can bring them to my backyard right now. I can make up a lie. They're not going to hit, and they're not going to dig up my yard. I mean, you understand that.
Penetrating radar was also used.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's it. I was just wondering.
I just want to finish this little bit
Deployed,
right here.
Detecting anomalies in the backyard. We completed the excavation.
And that's where something has been dug and, the ground isn't as firm.
Of the entire backyard and removed over 250 yards of dirt. Prior to backfilling the yard, the dirt was meticulously sifted for any potential human remains. We did not find Michael's remains. Although the remains of Michael Vaughn were not recovered, we strongly believe, based on evidence, that Michael was abducted and is deceased, and that
based on evidence
that his remains were buried and later moved from the property. As of today, the whereabouts of his remains are unknown. However, the investigation is active, fluid, and ongoing.